Okay, this is my Monday morning, the 23rd, so you guys are hopefully done with Spring Break 2.0 and beginning to progress through classes. I hope that's going well. And if there's anything you need help with, shoot me an email and I will see what I can do. Today, or right now, we're going to do P5, which is protein utilization in the ruminant. And of all of the things we do in the class, this is my favorite, and because it's actually what I spent time working on my PhD, and it's to probably the most complex. So this might be a video you want to spend some time with and some concepts you want to spend some time with. Okay, we're going to define 1, 2, 3, 4 acronyms briefly. And so the first one is DIP. And DIP, just the straight up definition is degradable intake protein. And so degradable intake protein is the part of a protein. So if we feed say we feed some soybean meal or some hay, there's protein. And we talked about measuring protein, that's crude protein. It tells us how much nitrogen is in the product or in the feed we're feeding. And so a fraction of that is degradable, meaning the microbes can degrade it so they can degrade this protein and use for the synthesis of microbial protein. Okay, and so after DIP, we have UIP, and UIP, a way students really get confused with DIP and UIP is they think the D stands for digestible, and that's not the case. It's degradable, meaning the microbes can degrade it. UIP is undegradable. Intake protein. Okay, an undegradable intake protein, the microbes cannot, so this can is important, and the cannot's important. Microbes cannot degrade this protein. Semicolon, however, approximately 80% of it is digestible by the mammal. Okay, so undegradable intake protein, the microbe can't access it, they can't do anything to it, but the mammal can. Okay, and when we talked about providing methionine to dairy cows, we said we'd want it to bypass or escape microbial degradation or microbial use. So we would want that methionine we're providing to be in the UIP fraction. If I want to provide an essential amino acid to the cow, to the actual mammal itself, I need it to be in the UIP fraction. Sometimes you will see these referred to as RDP, and RDP is rumen degradable protein, or ruminally degradable protein. RUP is ruminally undegradable protein. So same thing, just a little different acronym. Okay, so we have RDP and RUP, or UIP and DIP. What we need to define next is MCP, which we already kind of talked about. MCP is microbial crude protein. And the reason it's microbial crude protein is it's not just going to contain true protein that are made of amino acids. It's going to contain really anything that the microbe has in it that contains nitrogen. So we take a microbe, or actually a whole bunch of microbes, and we measure nitrogen on them, and basically we can determine how much nitrogen flows out of the rumen to the animal in the form of microbial crude protein. So microbial crude protein is nitrogen contained in ruminal microbes. Okay, and approximately 80% of MCP is true protein. That's a terrible true. True protein. Okay, and true protein is just made of amino acids. Also, approximately 80% of MCP is digestible by the mammal. So the cow or the ruminant can digest about 80% of the microbial crude protein that's present. Okay, the last thing that we really want to know is MP, and this stands for metabolizable protein. And so this is the protein, or if you want to think of it more specifically, the amino acids, the dipeptides, and the tripeptides absorbed by the mammal or the ruminant. I don't know why I'm using mammal today, but by the ruminant. Okay, and so that's metabolizable protein. How much protein the animal can actually utilize to meet its protein requirements for growth, lactation, wool growth, and maintenance, right? And so that's what we want to know, is how much metabolizable protein is available. Okay. If I feed protein to an animal, okay, that protein is going to be divided into two fractions. Say we feed 1,000 grams of protein. We're using 1,000 because it works well. I feed 1,000 grams of protein. Some fraction of that protein is UIP, and some fraction of that protein is DIP. And we're going to say it's 50% DIP. Let's do 60%. 60% DIP. That's impossible to read. 60% DIP. We're going to do it so they look different. And 40% UIP. The way I figure it is 1 minus DIP tells us how much UIP we have, because it has to be either DIP or UIP, which means my animal has access to 600 grams of DIP and 400 grams of UIP. Okay, everybody good with that? Makes sense? Okay, we said this is going to escape the rumen. I mean, the microbes aren't going to do anything to it. They can't touch it. It's going to hang out in the rumen. It's going to spend just as long amount of time in the rumen as the other stuff, but the microbes aren't going to degrade it anyway. It's going to go to the abomasum, and then it's going to go to the small intestine. Okay, and you guys already know what's going to happen in the abomasum. We're going to have pepsin. That's going to start working on, we're going to have the HCl that's going to denature this protein, and then in the small intestine, we're going to have all the enzymes we talked about last time. Same enzymes do the exact same thing, and then we're going to absorb amino acids, dipeptides, and tripeptides. Okay? We also learned right up here that about 80% of it's digestible. So if I know I fed them 400 grams of UIP and it's 80% digestible, so that means I have 320 grams of absorbed UIP, or 320 grams MP. So we have 320 grams of MP from UIP. Okay, DIP is going to be more complicated because the microbes are going to interact with it, and so we're going to have to draw a somewhat complicated little deal. Okay, and so what we can have when we feed DIP is we can have feed protein. You can actually feed them an entire protein. Okay, you could also feed them a feed peptide. And you could feed them you could feed them just a purified amino acid, or you could feed them some source of amino acid. We could also have feed ammonia. And we could have feed urea. I can go to the store and buy a bag of urea and feed that to my cow. Now remember, urea, how much percent crude protein does it have in it? 291% crude protein. How much real protein? None, because there's no amino acids in urea. What's going to happen is we're going to have, use red, because I haven't used red yet. We're going to have microbial enzymes, generally bacterial in nature, take feed protein and they're going to degrade it to a feed peptide. Then they're going to degrade it to amino acids. Okay? And they can even take and break it all the way down to feed ammonia. Okay? The microbe also could maybe take that feed amino acid, instead of making it go all the way to ammonia, they could take it and incorporate it as a microbial amino acid. They can say, hey, I really like this amino acid, I'm going to use it for my amino acid purposes. Feed urea can become feed ammonia, and it does that again using a microbial enzyme, and that enzyme is urease. Urease hydrolyzes urea into ammonia and CO2, two ammonias and CO2. Okay? And this is, we'll probably draw it over here. When we take an amino acid and we're going to degrade it, whether this is in the microbe or in the mammal itself, when we're going to metabolize an amino acid, what we end up doing is the animal or the microbe derives some ATP from this process. We also end up with a carbon skeleton, which is basically part of the R group or the carboxyl group. There's some carbon that remains, and ammonia. Okay, so if we're going this direction, if we're taking the amino acid and breaking it into smaller pieces, we end up with some ATP that the microbes can derive benefit from, a carbon skeleton, and ammonia. Okay, we can also go the other way, and we can synthesize amino acids from a carbon skeleton and ammonia, and generally that requires the input of energy. So when we're taking amino acids and making a carbon skeleton, we're outputting energy. The microbes are getting energy from that. We could use the carbon skeleton to get even more energy from. Some of them are VFAs, and the microbes or the cow could absorb them and use them as a source of energy or a source of carbon skeletons to synthesize their own amino acids. But what I really want you to see is when we take amino acids, we can produce a carbon skeleton and an ammonia, and that frees up some energy. When we take a carbon skeleton and ammonia and we want to synthesize an amino acid, that requires energy. Okay, we're going to extend this a little bit more. If I want to synthesize microbial crude protein in the rumen, or I could even synthesize just protein in general, that also is going to require energy. Okay, so the synthesis of amino acids and microbial crude protein is tied to the supply of energy. And the more energy I provide, the more amino acids and microbial crude protein I can synthesize. Okay, hopefully that helps. We'll see. So we come back over here, and we have DIP, and you could feed DIP in all of these possible forms. These are all forms of degradable intake protein. So DIP doesn't even actually have to be true protein, again, because we could feed urea or we could feed ammonia, both of which don't actually provide any amino acids. So when we take this feed amino acid and break it into ammonia, we know we're going to release ATP. The microbes are going to get some ATP from that. We're also going to produce ammonia, and we're going to produce, so I'll put a plus right here, really small, a carbon skeleton. Okay? This ammonia, this feed ammonia, or the ammonia that's being produced when we're in the ammonia pool, and this is basically just the ammonia that's floating around in the rumen, and that ammonia pool can move back and forth. We can use that ammonia to synthesize microbial amino acids, and we said for this to occur, we need to have a carbon skeleton, we need to have ATP. If we have a carbon skeleton, we get and we add ATP or provide ATP, we can synthesize microbial, this should be an and. We can synthesize microbial amino acids. The opposite can happen. We can take and degrade, and some microbes kill other microbes, or microbes die, and then they'll degrade their amino acids, and they'll degrade them back into a carbon skeleton and ATP. And when it's going down towards ammonia, we're getting ATP. The microbe gets ATP. When it's going up, we're using ATP. We're inputting energy into this system. Okay, we can then take this microbial amino acid. We can use it to synthesize microbial peptides. And so we're building microbes. As we build microbial peptides, we're building microbes. We're building their transporters, their enzymes, their structures. We're building actual microbes. And we can build that further, and we can make a microbial protein. Or MCP. Okay? And this generally requires the input of energy. To synthesize things requires the input of energy, and this is accomplished by microbial enzymes, as all of these steps are. So synthesis and degradation are accomplished by microbial enzymes. We have these down arrows indicating that if the microbes die in the rumen, the microbial peptides and proteins will be degraded back to this source. Okay, the microbial crude protein can then go to the abomasum. Okay, and then the abomasum microbial crude protein is going to be digested using the same enzyme, same hydrochloric acid as the UIP, following the same process. Okay. Hopefully everybody's still with me. This is a challenging part about the online thing, is because right now I would look and see who's confused. And so you're probably like, yeah, I'm confused. And if you're confused, back it up, listen to it again. We're going to talk about this a couple more times, so you'll be good. So this line I just drew is the rumen epithelium. Okay, or rumen papillae, however you want to think